Welcome to the Urban Wine Club podcast. Pour a glass, sit back, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Urban Wine Club webinar series. And in this segment, we are happy and excited to have the Flor de Caña Rum cocktail webinar. And with us, we have our special guest, Kayla Quigley, who is the brand ambassador of Flor de Caña based out of Massachusetts. So let's jump into the segment.
Spending time with us, because I'm sure you've got a lot going on, and being the brand ambassador for such a reputable company and family, it's an honor to have you here with us. And it's also exciting to know that rum, because I've been sipping rum for a while, and it's been so overlooked by not just the industry, but even my close friends and family, who consider themselves drinkers, and they mentioned they're big Scotch drinkers and they're big tequila drinkers, and they spend a ton of money on some of these products. But then it really boggles my mind that they've never really dipped into rum. But I've done some experiments where I've just poured out rum for some of my friends and so forth without letting them know what it was, and they had no idea that it was rum. Like, this can't be rum. But and having said that, I'd like for you to kind of go into the fact of what rum really is and what makes rum, and what are the processes that go behind the scenes of making rum.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you've touched on a lot of subjects, right? Like that the perception, I think the overarching in what you just said is ultimately that the perception of rum is not necessarily what rum translates to in market, right? And in bottle and in liquid form. So, if anything, I hope that today's conversation kind of changes that perspective for people to think that, ultimately rum doesn't have to be that sugary cocktail spirit that you have on the beach or on a cruise, or,
Right.
Somewhere out there that's like inexpensive and can't be enjoyed neat or on the rocks, as you're enjoying yours on the rocks right now. And I'm enjoying mine neat. So cheers, friend. So rum, all from a cultural, sort of this cultural moment that we're in right now, is certainly on the rise, which for a brand like Flor de Caña, for a rum lover such as myself, is really important, because for people to recognize that rum can be different from brand to brand, from region to region, from aging processes to the way that it's just produced in general, right? Once you start to really get into that nitty gritty, it's a different spirit altogether, right? Like it really has a lot of new. So in our conversation today, I do want to just kind of preface it with, we're talking about rum as an overarching category. There are many rum brands out there that do very differently or exactly the same as what I will describe in just a moment. So please don't get too upset if I don't discuss the exact process
That's okay.
of some of your favorite rum brands out there.
An overview would be fine.
Sure. So rum, when it starts, its base is sugarcane, which looks very much like bamboo. It is a tall stalk. It grows in incredibly hot climate. You can find it in Florida and pretty much southern US, and then central and Northern America, and of course the Caribbean. I think a lot of our understanding of rum really comes from the Caribbean, which I'll talk about in a moment.
Sure.
But rum can be made anywhere in the world if people have access to sugarcane or its byproduct. So the definition the working definition of rum is essentially a sugarcane distillate that is then fermented and distilled to produce a cane spirit, right? So it's very straightforward. The process of how rum is made is also pretty straightforward. So you have your raw material, right? You have your organic material, which will, sugarcane is what we're going to call that. So you have sugarcane, you cut down sugarcane. And what happens when you cut it is that the inside looks very much like bamboo, and you press it, and sugar comes out. Liquid sugar comes out of it when you press that. It's very sweet. It's just rich with sugar because it literally is sugar.
Right.
So from there, you press out that liquid, and you can either make rum right from that liquid, or you can go into a fermenting process, a refinement process when you're making rum. So that first stage of rum, where you just press the liquid out and then you go into fermentation. Now, the two things that happen in fermentation that are important are that sugar is converted into alcohol, and that gas is created, CO2, what we drink in our soda, beer, what have you.
Sure.
And we'll come back to that about Flor de Caña later on. So those are the byproducts of ferment. In some particular rums, they ferment that juice that comes right off of the cane. And then from there, they go into distillation. Now, it's super simple what happens in distillation, right? People make it very complicated, and there's many ways to distill. But the simplest way to understand it is you take almost a beer where you have raw material, yeast, water, that ferments, it's an alcohol. You boil that, it turns into vapor, you eliminate the water, and from there, you collect the alcohol. That's essentially what distillation is doing. Now, when you do it many times, you get what we call a pure alcohol, right? That's why other companies boast, like, we're 20 times distilled, right? You hear that a lot in some companies.
Does that necessarily mean, Kayla, the more it's distilled, the better it is? Or is that just preference?
No, not necessarily, because, right, for us, which we'll talk about the process of Flor de Caña later, but Flor de Caña is distilled only 5 times. Because when you distill, what you still want is to have some of those, what we call the chemical compounds that you want are called esters, right? They're the fragrance, they're the flavor. You still want those compounds to be a part of what your final product is. Gotcha. So if you what you end up with is neutral spirit. You end up with something that tastes flavorless and smells like nothing other than alcohol, right?
Or hand sanitizer.
Exactly, or hand sanitizer, right? How topical, like,
right?
Yeah. And so from there, you lose a little bit about it. And that's the art of distillation. That's the art of fermentation. And every brand is going to do that a little bit differently. Right. So from there, you've just created from that juice coming right off of the cane, what you've created is a French style of rum called rum agricole. And it is very unique to an island in the Caribbean called Martinique. There are very few producers that, actually produce this style of rum. It's very herbal, it's very grassy, it's very bright, and it's absolutely delicious, but it's a little funky. Okay. So not necessarily what you would commonly have in your rum and coke, right? Then from there, right? So let's move on to a different style of rum. The next style of rum, and the most common style of rum, is going to be from molasses as its raw material. So when you press out sugarcane, right? Come back to the process of sugarcane itself. When you press that, what ends up happening is the liquid comes out, and then you basically spin that in a giant centrifuge. You spin that liquid, and you create sugar crystals. Those sugar crystals are taken to whatever sugar refinery you have, and then refined and shipped to you to put into your coffee, to put into your simple syrup, to put into whatever it is that you use granulated sugar for, essentially, right? The byproduct, the waste of that particular process is molasses, which has a very rich history here in Boston, right? And in the Northeast in general. And so that byproduct is like liquid gooey gold for rum. Wow. What you have, so that is what the majority of rums are made from, is that molasses. So what ends up happening is you take that molasses base, that really sticky mess, and you add water and you add yeast, and the same fermentation process happens as we were talking about before. So you have the yeast heats up those sugars, converts that into alcohol, and converts that into CO2. So you start to see that bubbling on the top of your fermentation tank. If you've ever been to a brewery, you would see this as well. It's the same process. Okay. And then from there, we distill, right? It's the same exact process. Same thing happens. So from there, what happens after distillation? What's the next step? A lot of companies, a lot of brands, and a lot of rums out there will age aging. Okay, so what happens when you age a product? Only 2 things should happen when you age a product. It should soften the taste, because you're typically using wood, right? You have to use some sort of wood to age any spirit. You're getting color from the barrel, because that wood tannin is imparting the color to what's coming off of the still. Something, and just for all of us to note, anything that you distill, I don't care if it's a pisco to a whiskey to a vodka to a rum, anywhere, if you're distilling something, it comes clear when it's distilled. Yeah. It's clear. So a lot of people think like, oh, it's a whiskey, it must come off the still with this color, right? And by off the still, I mean when it's done distilling and you have whiskey at the end product, it is clear. Everything is clear. The same thing happens for tequila. The same thing happens for rum. Doesn't matter which category. Everything is clear after it's so when you see a product out there, any color is because of a couple of things. You want it to be from the barrel, naturally aged, because from there the color is coming from the actual barrel itself, imparting that oak or cherry wood or whatever it is, whatever barrel type you're using, right? And then from there, that's it. That should be the only color. If you have Anything else that's in, it's caramel coloring, which there's a lot of laws about, how much is allowed in different countries and whatnot, and what you're allowed to put on labels for, it's coloring and all of that. And then that's it. That's really the only way that you get color in a bottle. So, rum is very simple. It's just like other spirits in that sense, where the raw material is sugarcane. What happens from that point of cutting down that sugarcane can vary. What happens in fermentation is pretty straightforward. It really has to do with your raw material. How long you ferment something will indicate how dry it's going to be, because think about it, that yeast is eating the sugars.
Right.
So you're not going to have a very product, right? And then from there, how many times you distill will indicate how quote unquote pure the liquid is, which really is up to the brand and what the ultimate goal is of the brand.
So the takeaway here, Kayla, is basically that at the end of the day, rum is based off of sugarcane.
Correct.
Sugarcane. So that's basically the base of the spirit.
Yep.
And it
that's
typically
exactly
comes
it.
clear, right? Okay, great.
Exactly. And I do want to say, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to say also, right? So when people think that rum comes from sugar, that's incorrect in a sense, right? It doesn't come from sugar in the way that it's from your table sugar that you put in your coffee.
Right.
It comes from sugar, and not like simple syrup as you would put into a cocktail. It comes from sugar cane. It's no different than whiskey in the sense that whiskey isn't made from corn syrup. Does that make sense?
Correct. Yeah. Yes. Definitely.
Excellent. Perfect.
So now let's move on to the more fascinating part of this segment. Is so you represent, in my opinion, one of the best producers of rum in the world.
Thank you.
Flor de Caña. Can you talk to us a little bit about Flor de Caña, its history, and what our audience should know about Flor de Caña?
Absolutely. It's a long-winded history that I will give you the very abridged version for today's purposes. So it started in 1890. So we are 130 years old this year. So quite the longevity with the brand and with the company.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're 130 years old. Our founder came from Genoa, Italy, to Nicaragua, which is where we still produce our rum. Nicaragua is in Central America for us that need a map in front of us. And he moved there with zero intention of making rum. In fact, when he moved there, the gold rush had kind of petered out, but was still something that was pretty active for people getting from east to west in the U.S.
Yep.
And the Panama Canal was still underway, construction. So there was a very popular route that was Nicaragua. So what would happen is that people would come from through New Orleans, get on a boat, come through Nicaragua, all the way through the river, the lake, and then back out to the river. And so this route became incredibly popular for a lot of people to get from east to west. There are many factors for why that route then became a little bit less popular, primarily the Panama Canal. And so what ended up happening is that sorry for my dog, I apologize. So what ended up happening, he said, all right, what the heck am I going to do? I've made a decent amount of money. What am I going to do? What's my next venture? And so he took up root in Nicaragua and purchased a sugar mill. And so, as I said, rum stems from sugarcane, right? So every year to celebrate the harvest, what they would do is they would take that tiny bit of molasses and they would distill it. And that was sort of the celebratory action that was happening. And as we know with wine, with any spirit really, what ends up happening is something small gains sort of regional acclaim and then national acclaim and then global acclaim, right? Like that's sort of the goal. And so what ended up happening is that this spirit, they were like, holy crap, this is pretty good stuff. Right? People around were like, we're looking forward to this happening. And ended up, you flash forward years, Flor de Caña is now still operating as a sugar mill. We have a sister company. So we still make our own sugar and our own molasses. We are single estate. And for those that don't know, single estate is simply that we control everything from field to bottle. So we have 37,000 acres, give or take, of sugarcane that we harvest ourselves, and we deal with our sugar mill. We take that molasses, and that's still for Flor de Caña.
So
we
Kayla,
are in 70 plus countries. No, please.
So basically, would that be the equivalent for those of us that are wine lovers?
Sure.
When you see on the labels, estate grown. So basically, wine producers who basically also farm and grow their own grapes, produce their own wine. Would that be the equivalent?
Exactly. Okay. That's the exact same. Yes. So being single estate grown, you can think about it in the same sense as viniculture, in that idea where instead of grapes, it's sugarcane. So because we have every aspect of it, again, we started as so we have this ability to then harvest produce refined sugar, take that byproduct, and then produce rum at a global scale. It's pretty incredible. So from there, I mean, you would think that 130 years old, right? You've got 130 years of production, that somebody would come along the way and say, like, we're now the owners of. That has not ever happened. We are still proudly owned by the Pelas family. We are 5th generation family owned, which is quite the distinction. 3 in 10,000 companies in any industry makes it to 5th generation. Usually around 3rd to 4th, you know, you have either somebody comes in and purchases, or you have, you know, as we like to joke, you know, we have, you know, some party boy or girl comes in and then ruins it for everybody. But, you know, with all that heat, what have you. But no, that's sort of been eye on the prize of premium rum for, you know, 130 years and 5 generations. So we're very proud of that. Being single estate also allows for Flor de Caña to, again, control from field to bottle, which having that control has actually earned us our fair trade certification. So we are one of the only global spirits to be fair trade certified. And it's something that we are incredibly proud of. You know, I mean,
that's great.
You know, I mean, when you think of other brands, right, when you, and not just in the liquor world, right, who is fair trade? You think of Patagonia, you think of different chocolates, of different coffees, of all these sort of brands.
Right.
And it's, you don't think about spirits as an agricultural product. But ultimately, that liquid in the bottle started from something agricultural, which means that somebody had to harvest it, which means that somebody had to get it from its raw material to the bottle for you. And for us, we're incredibly proud to be fair trade certified. You know, Foti, what do you think of, when you think of fair trade, what is like the first thing that you think of? Like, what makes something fair trade?
I think the actual overall practices of what's implemented amongst the folks that actually make the production happen, equality in work conditions, pay scale, equipment, resources, even just for me, it all comes down to the interaction with the people who work for you. All that for me is what comes to mind when it comes to fair trade. It's basically, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we purchase a product off the shelf and it looks fascinating and it tastes amazing, but we never really think about what goes behind the scenes to make this happen. And as you mentioned, you know, living in the U.S., and for those of us that haven't explored or been, you know, into these parts of the world where, you know, things are different, and the folks that are out there in the agricultural world, who spent, you know, many hours back-breaking duty to put together what's necessary to produce a final product. You know, I think about the people that are more about the people who actually are in the actual fields, whether it's, you know, grape growing, sugar cane, grains, what have you. You know, there's an army of people who are out there dedicating their, I would say, or compromising their lifestyle to work hard to actually be able to what we're having today in this bottle or in our glass.
No, and I think you just hit a lot of really keys that make sort of agricultural production in any company very poignant, and what makes fair trade so important, right? I mean, you mentioned employees, you mentioned community, you mentioned the process in which something is made. So, you know, for Flor de Caña to be fair trade certified, the way that we're able to do that, again, is that we oversee everything that happens from field to bottle. And just to put it into perspective, right? If you're in Nicaragua, it is hot as heck. You're on your back porch or out in your backyard right now, sweating to death. And I'm in my kitchen a little sweaty right now. Like, it's hot and humid right now. This is nothing in comparison to what is happening in Nica, in Central America. It's just dense, hot, humid weather. So the things that we put into place for the harvesting of Flor de Caña are largely the part of why we are fair trade certified. If I may just kind of describe some of that.
Absolutely, please.
So when you harvest sugarcane, it's really backbreaking, really difficult labor, because what happens is husks. It's almost like if you've ever been a little kid and tried to break a fresh branch in half, right? Like, it's too green, it won't snap. So that's sort of what happens a lot of the time in sugarcane. So what we do is we burn sugarcane, and what that does is it sort of hardens up the husk, right? Okay. That bark, for lack of a better term. So it allows for us to essentially cut down much easier. Now, that would be if we were doing, you know, majority by, like, you know, manual labor. We do most of our harvesting because we are a global brand. Keep in mind, we're the 5th largest premium rum brand globally. So we are a very big brand despite,
Wow.
sort of our local premium size. So when we harvest, we're about 90 to 95% mechanized. The only percentage, that tiny percentage that is done manually, is really cared for because we recognize how intense that labor is.
Sure.
So what we do, we have sort of machetes, for lack of a better term, right, that are ergonomical, that everybody has to wear protective to make sure that nobody is hurt while in the field. Mandatory breaks are incredibly important for us. There's sort of this solution that's given that's almost like a Gatorade, right? Pedialyte, some sort of an electrolyte solution that other companies might give you like 1 or 2, per day, unlimited for us. So when you're in the field, we want to take care of our employees and our partners. From there, it actually extends further into community. So in 1913, you heard me right, 1913, we opened up a company school, and that is free for all of the children, for the employees of Flor de Caña and for our sugar mill.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's a beautiful facility. I've been there. It's incredible. The people who work there, the teachers are absolutely just incredible, incredibly like wonderful people.
I love to hear stuff like that.
Further in 58, we opened up a company hospital. So for the same reasons, we've just for anybody that works for Flor de Caña and for San Antonio for our sugar mill, anybody who works for the company can go there free of charge on behalf of Flor de Caña. So this is really important for us as well to make sure that the welfare of our team is there. We donate a ton of nonprofits. We have a community fund. So actually every bottle, doesn't matter which mark and which year of Flor de Caña you purchase, every bottle of Flor de Caña, we actually have a community fund that is then given to the community where Flor de Caña is produced for them to say, okay, we need a new road, we need new whatever for the school. So we give money back to the community. And by that, I mean, you give money back to the community every time that you purchase Flor de Caña, which is really wonderful. And it, from that alone, that gives us the sort of community and employee side of what fair trade means. But fair trade also means the environmental aspects, right? So we're a holistic model that we're operating, which includes that environmental. And I think that's something that's like really important for a lot of people right now, right? Last year's like most Googleable or top word was climate change last year. People are very clear what's happening environment. And so Flor de Caña has taken a stance to make sure that we are a brand with a purpose in that particular avenue. So for Flor de Caña, right, let's talk about the process of what Flor de Caña does and how we produce our rum. Again, we are, field to bottle. I've already talked about that. We cut down, reduce, we distribute sugar. We are a wholesaler for sugar as well from our sister sugar mill. We take the molasses, and that's sort of the liquid gold for Flor de Caña. We then go into fermentation. And again, what happens in fermentation? You get alcohol and CO2. Now, CO2 is not exactly the best for the ozone and for the environment, especially at the scale that we're producing rum.
Okay.
Right? So what we do is we actually have closed in tanks. So it's not just gas sort of bubbling up and over. We have closed fermentation tanks. So we capture the CO2 and we distribute that to beer and soda companies in Nicaragua. Oh. So that's completely recycled back to other companies. From there, we go into distillation. We distill 5 times, as I mentioned. We use all column stills, so continuous still, much like a whiskey production. And for us, that's what we get the purest form of Flor de Caña for us. Again, many other companies will do other processes, but for us, that's what we do. Then we go into ex-bourbon barrel. Again, recycling those barrels come to the US because if you're making bourbon, it has to be white oak. So we take those used barrels, we recoup them in Nica, and then from there, we age. Where we're located is at the base of Cristobal, which is the most active volcano in Nicaragua. So it's super hot and super humid. So in a brief amount of time, we're actually able to get a lot of barrel integration. Now, how do we process or how do we power this entire operation? Well, as I said, when you cut down sugarcane, right, what ends up happening is you press out the juice, right? And then you're left with that husk we were talking about. Well, we chop up that husk and we actually use that. We burn that and power a steam turbine that powers the entire distillery.
Whoa.
So we are completely distilled with renewable energy, 100%. And we are actually energy positive. We supply energy to Nicaragua's national grid. And
Wow.
because of our fermentation, we're actually now, and I'm very proud to announce to all of you this year, we are actually carbon neutral. So it's a huge, huge accolade for us. We're very proud to boast.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, just to listen to what you're saying just makes me want to drink Flor de Caña all the time.
Well, you have a bottle. I saw it. Yeah, there it is. Don't even. He's like, oh, I wish I had some.
But so Kayla, you've hit a lot of great points. We're all big supporters of producers and companies that actually take these steps. Everything you just mentioned about Flor de Caña, it's like, why wouldn't you support a company that actually gives back so much into their community? But that also trickles beyond their community. I think that's a global statement that they're making. But more or less, now I'd like to move into the fact that let's discover together as we're sipping. I'm sure some of our folks who don't have it are going to wonder what it's like, but let's get into the actual products that we have. I noticed that you have
Sure.
3 different bottles in front of you.
I do.
And did we mention that Florida in Nicaragua there's an active volcano, right?
Yes, so that's San Cristobal, which the distillery, as I mentioned, is very close. We're actually 5 miles away from where we barrel Flor de Caña. So it's, again, that dense, hot, humid climate.
Volcanic soils and so forth.
Exactly. I mean, you have volcanic soil, which enriches the sugar itself. You have the water coming down from the actual volcano, which enriches the fields additionally. But ultimately, I think the most important part about it is really the aging process. Okay. And, quickly, I think the best way that I can describe that is, we're up here in New England. It gets really cold. Right now I'm dying, but it does get really cold. And okay. So you think about the way that a barrel works and operates, right? To kind of put it into layman's terms. When you put that clear spirit into a barrel, teeny tiny barrel, right? I leave it outside from November to February. Right? Or even all year, whatever. Say okay. November to February, just because those are chilly months. When you personally are walking around Boston and you're cold, or just New England in general, and it's those months, you are bundled up, right? You've got your layers, your skin closes up, your pores tighten, right? Because it's cold. The same thing is happening to the wood in the barrel. So when you are aging something in cold weather or, tepid weather, the barrel doesn't really open up to give any, and by anything, I mean flavor or color. So if you were to look at a 12-year-old Scotch, for example, it would look a bit lighter than our Flor de Caña rum.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because the barrel hasn't quite opened up enough in that Scottish climate to integrate color and flavor. For Flor de Caña, it is as hot as it is today, if not more, at the base of San Cristobal. So for us, like if you think of yourself as a barrel, you're sweating. The same thing is happening with the barrel. So the barrel's letting air in and out. It's letting air similar to what we're doing now. And so we're like, oh, please, it's so hot. Like let that air come through. The same thing is happening with the barrel. So the liquid inside is integrating a bit more. So when you're looking at something like aged spirits, that's ultimately why, right? Like you're seeing sort of that terroir, as you would discuss in the wine world,
right,
plays a big part in the rum world as well, from sugarcane all the way to barreling.
I never knew. Thankfully that we have you to let us know that, because it's fascinating to know what goes on behind the scenes and put things into perspective. Again, going back to the fact that you've got 3 bottles there that are in front of you, which all look. I and myself and Ari, we both have the 12-year list here.
Yes.
Even though this looks like it hasn't been used, this is my second bottle since we've been prepping for this for the last couple of weeks.
That's what I like to hear. Good,
right?
Yeah, good work.
And we did promise our audience that you will be demonstrating 2 cocktails for us with Flor de Caña.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Maybe give us a really quick, brief rundown of what's in those 3 bottles and what makes them so different from each other.
Sure. So each mark of Flor de Caña is a little bit different from the yeast that we offer, right? So as I said, when you ferment, you are using yeast to eat up those sugars that then create alcohol. So I won't go into the detail of that, but each one of them has a different yeast strain, as we call it. So that flavor will be always a little bit different, but it doesn't impart that much flavor to the overall product. As I said, Flor de Caña is a dry style of rum. What that means is that we let it ferment, for the most part, all the way to its natural end, right? So we let the yeast just do its work. We don't add any sugars. So that's really important for Flor de Caña. So our 12-year, and the way that we age is what we call an absolute average blending, right, and aging. So when you have Flor de Caña 12, notice that it doesn't say Flor de Caña 12 single barrel. It says Flor de Caña 12 year. This is an absolute average blend of rums of similar ages around 12 years. So what you have in here is rums as old as 16 years and as young as 8. So when you think about the value, right? When you go and you spirit that's 10 years old, think about the price tag that's associated with that. Now, right? You're getting, and then, I mean, think about it as you on down the lineup, but you're getting spirit that it has rum as old as 10 years in there, the core of which is 12, but the absolute average, as we understand it to be, is 12 years.
That makes more sense.
When we talk about our 18, the same math applies. So these are rums at the core are 18, with an absolute average being 22, all the way down to, so you've got juice in here that is 2 years old. I dare you to go and find something for the value out there, another spirit category even, that has been resting in ex-bourbon barrel for that long and then vatted together. I mean, it's an incredible spirit. So our 12-year drink's a little bit sweeter than our 18. Our 18 is pretty much bone dry. It is, I would argue, one of the driest spirits that we have. And by dry, I mean, when you do like that, which I hate that noise, sorry for everybody else who does, but when you do that, your mouth literally dries out, your tongue dries out. And that's from the oak tannin. It's from the actual barrel itself. And then our 25, as you can see, we did a little damage on the 25. Wow. Sorry.
Is there anything left in that bottle?
There's a little. I'll drink it in front of you if you want. Like,
that's not fair, though. That's not fair at all.
Our 25 milligram of our entire portfolio, because again, when you think about the math, the same math applies at all three. So what ends up happening is you have core of 25. The oldest liquid is 29 years old and the youngest is 21. Wow. So this is a decade worth of absolutely delicious aged rum. And it's really a very special bottle. Certainly something that we, could celebrate with. And then the differences are, 12 years cocktail spirit, 18 years neat rocks, sparkling water, that sort of thing. And 25 best on its own, neat or on the rocks.
Oh, definitely. Awesome. That's great.
So, or large cheap. So these are our super premium, ultra premium categories.
So we're not making cocktails with a 25-year.
I mean, I'll make a daiquiri if you want. Let's get weird, buddy.
I'm kidding. But
whatever you want.
Let's get right to it. I think
cool.
Our audience is anticipating your demonstrations on the two cocktails that we want you to feature. And why don't you take it away, Kayla, and let's start with the first cocktail.
Foti, I'm just going to switch that around real fast because I have to grab some ice as it is incredibly hot. So would you mind telling them about the opportunity to purchase some Flor de Caña with you guys?
Hopefully all of us now are a little more intrigued about rum than before. And we have this great opportunity where we're featuring the Flor de Caña 12-year that's available on our platform to purchase, and it comes along with a nice little set here. So it comes with a Flor de Caña mixing can, the logo right on the itself, along with a Flor de Caña mixing glass. So try to get a shot here. So this rum, Flor de Caña rum kit, is available on Urban Wine Club's shopping cart. And we'd love for you to take a chance and purchase this kit. Hopefully, Kayla and I, the team here over at Urban Wine Club, have intrigued your interest on trying Flor de Caña. We highly recommend it if you haven't had it before. But this is available for either for the local market. We do local deliveries if you place an order through urbanwineclub.co. And if you live outside of our local delivery radius, it gets shipped to you via FedEx. So please visit the site. We'd love for you to buy a bottle as kit. I love the sample kits here with the glass and the can. I think they're industry grade, so they're not little cheap glasses or by any.
Can I quickly chime in here with one of my little? I don't know much about rum.
You do now.
Well, yeah.
I was like, liar. Now you do.
After this, absolutely. But the second I took the cork off, that aroma is just
smacked you in the face.
It's amazing. Like,
what do you smell? What are you picking up?
Well, first of all, it's like a cork, right? So I have this like kind of oakiness, but it's this rich, like enticing. I want to say intoxicating, but like this rich, enticing aroma that like I've never smelled in a rum before, to be perfectly honest.
That's fantastic.
And
So our 12-year, like, you know, and when you put it into a glass, it obviously opens up a bit more, but the, you know, it'll open up so you can get a little bit more of those esters, as we were talking about, of that smell. You know, it gives you a lot of that like nuttiness with some toffee, little green apple, like once you really get into it. And again, these are aged in ex-bourbon barrels, so you definitely get some caramel and some vanilla as well coming from those ex-bourbon barrels.
yeah,
So that's where a lot of that comes from.
I gotta say, Kayla, very, very smooth. I mean, I just poured a glass out neat before I had it on the rocks. Now that it's cooled down, if you notice, there's a lot of shade
Yeah, I was
behind
like,
it.
the sun's kind of setting. It
Right?
looks nice back there.
So I gotta say, I mean, extremely smooth. I mean, I'm very pleased.
Great.
The textures and the mouthfeel.
Absolutely. No, and I'm happy to hear that, you know, and that smoothness again comes from the amount of times that you distill to make sure you get the purest form of alcohol, and then you're softening that with the aging in the barrel ultimately. So having that, you know, extended amount of time in the barrel is definitely helpful for that, you know, overall mouthfeel and roundness. And again, we don't add any sugars and we don't add any artificial ingredients or colors. You don't get that sort of astringency or astringency rather.
Yeah, very clean finish.
Very clean. Exactly. So on that, as far as cocktails go, today we're going to be making a rum old fashioned for the first cocktail, because I think that what ends up happening, people are kind of, you know, pigeonholed into making a cocktail that is, you know, either rum and coke or a mojito or daiquiri, right? And even the daiquiri, a lot of people that a daiquiri has to be like strawberry flavored and on a beach.
I was just going to say
right?
that.
And frozen, like not handshake, which you know very well. And thank you for this. There's a delicious Flor de Caña daiquiri at Ilona. So handshaken. And so, you know, I think that in rum into a cocktail that is sort of, you know, it's in cocktail canon, right? And introducing rum into an old fashioned is something that you can do very easily. And with something that isn't a sweet style of rum, you can absolutely control the sweetness going into your drink. And I think that's where this cocktail works incredibly well. So what I'm going to do today is, this is for ease of execution at home. For those of you that are bartenders, beverage managers, what have you out there, cocktail experts, you can certainly do this in your, just drinkers in general. You can certainly do this at your bar. You know, there's 1,000 different variations of this. So what we're going to do today is, for both cocktails that we're going to use are Flor de Caña 12. Again, this has a little bit of sweetness to it, which comes from residual sweetness from fermentation process of Flor de Caña, but also from the barrel itself. So I'm going to do 2 ounces of Flor de Caña, and it's going right in the glass. Like, we're not going to get too crazy about it. Right in whatever glass you would be drinking. Again, for ease of execution at home, let's not make more dishes while make Flor de Caña cocktail. Any sense?
Okay.
Then I'm going to add some sugar to my drink. So the old fashioned is spirit, bitters, sugar. It's an old fashioned style cocktail. Those are the 3 ingredients, no citrus, right? So this, whereas you may be like, oh, where are my cherries and my orange and all of this, right? Not happening today. So then we're going to take our sugar, and I'm using turbinado sugar, which is partially refined. So that's why it's got that brown color. It's not perfect as your white sugar would. And I'm going to add a 1/2 ounce right into the glass. And you'll start to see it's syrupy. It's kind of, from there, I'm going to add Angostura bitters, which is probably the most common and ubiquitous bitter that you'll find on any bar, anywhere with it, whatever style of bar. And you're going to want to add 3 dashes of that. What Angostura bitters does is it gives it sort of this herbal dry quality. So it's going to balance out the sweetness, but it's also going to bring out some of those flavors from the rum and from the syrup. Then I'm going to take orange bitters. Now there's a ton of different varieties of orange bitters. Regan's is the one that I prefer. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3 dashes into my glass. And then from there, you certainly want to add ice. And now again, this is a dish-free situation. We're going, you know, we want to go as simple as possible. This is called a cocktail build, or for if you've ever heard of a built drink or anything like that. So I'm going to take a cocktail. Yes, of course.
Any preference of the type of ice? I notice you have really nice symmetrical cubed ice there, but does the ice make a difference?
The ice does make a difference. So I think a lot of the time, I don't know if you've heard this in your time in the beverage world, but a lot of people sometimes will say, oh, I'll have mine with light ice, right? It's like, oh, hold the ice. Well, the ice just dilutes faster, right? When you have drinks that are, you know, say a rum and coke, right? Let's come back to that. And you say, oh, light ice. Well, all that does is dilute your drink. It doesn't chill it at all. All it does is dilute.
Very good point.
So what you want to do when you're making cocktails is make sure that you have an appropriate amount of ice. And coming back to the quality of ice, I just have like a silicone here, nothing crazy. little square cubes.
They
They're
look good.
1 inch by 1 inch. I didn't filter them or anything, just tap water. We are fortunate. We live in Boston with some really great water,
Cool.
comparatively to other places. And so I do think that the ice that you have, you want to sure that your ice isn't going to dilute quickly, right?
Okay.
It's not going to melt very, very quickly. The smaller the ice cube, the smaller the surface, the faster the dilution. That's why you see a lot of people eating whiskey on a large cube or in an ice sphere, right? It's smaller, the surface area, or the more surfaces. The more surfaces that you have, the many cubes that you may throw, the more surfaces, the faster the dilution,
So
typically speaking.
The tip here is big ice.
Big ice or pretty sized. And so what we're going to do today, I don't care if you use a tablespoon from your drawer, a straw that you have from wherever you got your coffee this morning, or a bar spoon. You're just going to stir up your drink a little bit. That's it. And the reason that you stir your cocktails is that pretty much everything that's in the glass is the same density. And it's the same, it's going to dilute the same, essentially, is what I mean by that. So by stirring my cocktail, I'm chilling and I'm diluting, because ice is, for me, the most important ingredient in a cocktail. It's sort of that trick question that I ask people sometimes. But the more you work in the cocktail world, I think it's the most important ingredient is having great ice. I've worked in bars that had horrible ice, and it's very difficult to manage your cocktails. So you're going to give that cocktail a little quick stir for 2 reasons: to chill and to dilute, because I don't want to drink my rum, my bitters, and my syrup at room, right? Have you ever, Foti, have you ever had, I'm just going to grab a quick thing real fast. Have you ever had a bad cocktail experience where you've had sort of that, somebody gave you an over diluted or something of this?
Well, that would kind of tell you about all the bad places I've been to. But yes, I've had my fair share of bad drinks, and not because of the place, but unfortunately, depending on who's tending bar,
Sure.
sometimes we'll have variations. But yeah, I've had my share of bad drinks, and like you said, bad ice. Not bad ice, but poor ice, or just being inconsistent with the recipe.
Sure. Over dilution, those sort of things. We've all had one cocktail that tasted different than the other, that we had pretty much ordered the exact same drink at the exact same bar, right?
Right.
And then, so now that we've executed the cocktail itself, we got the lid in the cup. Next is our garnish, right? So garnish is really important because it should impart something to your drink. I think that garnish that is just there for fluff can be fun, and it's a big part of the tiki culture within rum. But when you're making something like a rum old fashioned, you want just simple garnish, right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a whole lemon, not an orange.
Okay, not an orange.
Your mind. Yeah, blowing your mind. And we're going to peel that. And so if you can hear, I've peeled from the skin and I've left this white part. The white part is the pith. The pith is very bitter, and it has its functions in cocktail syrups, it has its functions in culinary worlds altogether. But it does us no good in our cocktail for this particular purpose.
Okay.
So I've just got this little peel here, fresh off the lemon. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to express it over the top. And how I'm going to do that is taking it horizontal and just squeezing it towards me so that the outside basically expresses out those lemon oils, right? And you'll be able to see it come out of it. And then I'm just going to kind of touch the rim of the glass with it so that those oils are on the edge. And then I'm going to say, forget about you, lemon, because I don't want you floating in my drink. Because it's already done its job, right? I've already got the oil. I don't need something floating aimlessly in my drink.
Do you talk to your lemon peels often?
I do, actually. I have a very close relationship.
So they understand.
They understand. There's no offense. We had a conversation. It's totally fine. So, but the purpose of this, right, is that I don't want to be drinking a drink and moving that peel around. I've already expressed the oils. It's already done what it's going to do for me. There are more sustainable ways to do this, which would include making an oil spray, which you can definitely Google, and it's very doable. And it's something that gives you the ability to utilize the whole citrus fruit and then express it over the top of your drink. So now we have our Flor de Caña 12 old fashioned, built very to a classic old fashioned, but it's going to be much smoother.
And Kayla, if I can add that for our audience that actually would want to try this, we have the recipe loaded on our webinar web event page, but we'll definitely have that uploaded to the website. So for those of us that want to come back to it, you can see the recipe on Urban Wine Club's as well.
And the app.
And the app.
And the app.
And the app.
How
about the app?
My God, you guys are so prepared. I love it. And then, so that's our rum old fashioned. Again, the takeaway from here is to utilize aged rums into sort of classic style cocktails and walk away with that.
One more quick question before we move on to the next recipe or cocktail. The simple syrup or the syrup or the sugar that you just mentioned, in case we don't have access to it, what would be your second go-to substitute for it?
Simple syrup works just fine, and simple syrup is just made with granulated white sugar. It works just fine. The reason that I utilize turbinado sugar or even brown sugar, right, is that it has remaining notes of molasses. Because again, think about how sugar is refined, right? Like you're taking away from those molasses notes the closer you get to what we call table sugar, right? Those white granulated sugar. So if you have darker sugar, it's going to have more of those molasses notes, and it'll play very well with rum.
Any suggestions of where our audience could possibly find and pick up some of that turbinado sugar? Yeah,
absolutely. So you can find it at pretty much any grocer. Sugar in the Raw has one, which is a ubiquitous brand that you would find. So you can definitely find them. Yeah, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Star Market, Stop and Shop. You can find it pretty much at any mainstream grocer. So no problems there.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So now we're going to move on to our next exciting, delicious cocktail.
This is one of my absolute favorite cocktails. So I'm very excited to share it with you guys. It's a riff on sort of this cocktail called the Legionnaires Club that originated in Boston at one of my favorite bars and restaurants. I apologize, my dog barks in the background. Okay. This is a cocktail that is built on rum, mint, sugar, bitters, coffee. I added the coconut.
Ooh,
so instead of having lime juice, where you would basically have a a coffee mojito, right? This is something that you have, or a coffee daiquiri, right? This is something where you're kind of introducing more of those sweeter flavors. You're giving it a little bit of a bigger, what we call mouthfeel, right? For lack of a better term.
Right.
So we're making a little bit of a bigger drink. And I also love coffee drinks. I just love them. I think that
we can have this in the morning. We can have this for breakfast.
Absolutely. I'm not going to stop you. Okay. So now, as there are rums out there that all will vary in flavor, complexity, taste, what have you, there are also a lot of coffee liqueurs out there. So I just want to preface that with, we're using today Boston Harbor Distillery's coffee liqueur. You can utilize cold pressed coffee. You can use, drip coffee, espresso at your house. You don't have to do a liqueur.
Okay.
But this works very well in this particular cocktail because it's a very dry particular
Gotcha.
spirit. So what we're going to need for this particular cocktail is, of course, Flor de Caña. So we're going to add 1.5 ounces of Flor de Caña, and this is going to be a shake technique. So as you were saying, you've got those cocktail shakers that are what we call Boston style, right? They're Boston shakers.
Is that a term? These are called Boston shakers?
They're called Boston shakers. So when you have glass on tin, it's called a Boston shaker.
Is that really from?
I'm not even making it up. I'm not even making it up.
This here is from.
There it is. That is the Boston shaker. Which, if you ever need to get any sort of cocktail ware outside of your stuff, your materials, there is a place in Boston, in Somerville, called the Boston that gives you access to many other cocktail
Did you know that, Ari?
Tools and treats.
Yeah, it's literally like a 5-minute walk from my apartment.
Well, thanks for telling me.
Yeah, right. You said you're in Maryland. Don't lie to me.
All right.
Now we know where Ari lives.
Just
so we're gonna
add up from the Shaker Company, and you'll find me. Except I'm in Maryland right now. No Shaker.
Yeah. Sure.
Shaker boy.
So far we've got our Flor de Caña. We're gonna add 1.5 ounces into our. If you are doing this at home, using a pint glass is totally fine. I'm using a short cocktail tin. That's totally fine as well. Whatever you have, you're just going to be shaking. So as long as you have a vessel that will close on both ends and vacuum seal essentially so you can shake and not get it all over yourself, do it, whatever you have. Then I'm going to use, again, that Boston Harbor. So if you guys can see that there, that's Boston Harbor coffee liqueur.
Can we give a shout out to Rhonda Kelman from Boston Distillery?
Of course we can.
We love Rhonda, and she makes exceptional products, I should say, right?
She does.
Rhonda's the person who turned me from a very light and fruity alcohol drinker into a whiskey.
Whoa. What were you drinking? Putnam Rye?
Yes.
Putnam Rye.
And I was scared. We actually went to her to do a podcast, and they were drinking, and I'm like, no, I'm good.
No.
And then I'm like, after a while, I saw them having such a good time that I'm like, all right, let me try this. I've been an alcoholic ever since.
Yeah, they sucked you right in, didn't they, with that
Blame
delicious Putnam Rye? I like it. Blame it on Rhonda.
I blame it on Ron.
So we can blame this cocktail on Rhonda entirely. This is all her fault.
We should name the cocktail Blame It on Rhonda.
Yeah, this is no longer the Flor Cafe. This is Blame It on Rhonda. I like it.
But
so then we're going to use Rhonda's spirit here, and we're going to add 1 full ounce of coffee liqueur. You're going to do the same thing if you're using coffee at home.
Okay.
You'll be doing the exact same thing. Hopefully, espresso, some sort of like a very concentrated coffee works best for this, simply because you want that coffee flavor without over diluting, right?
Okay.
Like you're already going to be adding ice. So then again, right into your glass or your tin, what have you. You're going to add sugar. We're still using the same Turbinado sugar. This is the beauty of this drink, is that you can do as much sugar or as little sugar as you would like. I don't like very sweet drinks, but I do think that sugar balances a drink. So I'm only going to add a half an ounce into my cocktail, right on into there. And now I'm going to blow your minds with some coconut milk.
Whoa.
So we're doing coconut milk. Reason for coconut milk rather than any other quote unquote dairy product is that I know there's a lot of people out there who have dairy allergies and are adverse for having, some sort of, milk or dairy product in their cocktail. And so the reason for that, using the coconut, is that exactly. This is unsweetened. Again, I don't like very sweet cocktails personally. I want to be able to control my sugar, which is exactly what I did with my Turbinado. So I'm going to add 1 full ounce of coconut milk right on in there. Then I'm going to add 2 dashes, 2 of that Angostura bitters that we saw in the rum old fashioned. And now I have a lot of mint in my life right now, as I described to you guys before we got on here. I'm going to pick off a couple of these. So just a couple, 8 or 9 good chunks of leaves here. Bloop, 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 right on in there. And you're like, Kayla, you're so crazy. Why are you dumping all of that in there? That's wild. Then I'm going to throw ice right into the tin or into your shaker. Okay. And now this is the other side of your Boston shaker, right?
Right.
This is the tin portion of it. And what happens is that this metal is going to quote unquote, conduct or chill your glass. And so I'm going to put that on there you see this, that it's on an angle?
Yes.
So this gap here, you want to be able to kind of stick your finger in this gap here before you close the gap. The reason, whether it's glass or tin, whatever it is, right? If you're using a pint glass, doesn't matter. The reason for that is because otherwise you create a vacuum seal that you can't open. And that stinks. So we've all done it. I've done it 1,000 times at the bar and you're like, ugh.
Awkward.
Yeah, it's like, I've done this for a bit, but I'm lousy at my job today. So then you're just going to smack the top of your tin, the taller tin, and you're going to flip this over. And the reason that you flip it over, this side, for those of you at home that don't have metal, is going to be your glass. Now, why do you do that? Because if I'm sitting at your bar or at your dining room table, I don't want this side coming at me if it comes open.
Oh.
I'm not only going to get hit with glass, but I'm going to get hit with all the crap that's in this tin, right? So we're just going to shake. And when you shake, you want to have this forward to back motion. You'll see so many people with these really fancy cocktail shakes. It's very simple. It's just back and forth. And that's that. So you're going to shake it for about 10, 15 seconds if you've got that glass, about 10 seconds if you have tin on tin, right? Metal on metal. And then to get it open is really the trick. How many times have we seen this guy happen? We've got this. Oh man, I can't get it open. You see so many things. You're going to want to hit it again where that space is, where you can fit that. Yeah, get it. So both of you want to hit it on the other side, right? So flip it for you. Turn the tin. Nope, other way. Sorry, turn it this way. Yeah, there you go. So you want to hit where that gap is. There you go. And then it's going to pop open. So that gap is what's going to separate the glass. And then again, this is for zero work at home. Other than having these ingredients and dumping them into a glass with some ice, I want you to just put everything right into the glass.
Wow.
Including the mint, including everything. You are more than welcome to add more ice to this. As I said, the way that ice works keeps your drink cold. If you don't have enough ice, This will then just quickly dilute. Crushed ice is really nice. So you can get a really cheap ice crusher at, online for very, maybe 10 or $11. And you can have all the crushed ice in your world that you want at home. And so this particular cocktail is very, very simple. And the whole point of it is for you to have, again, that like rum, coffee, really nice, again, decadent, but bright and refreshing coming from the mint. So very simple sort of adaptation of some cocktails, some coffee cocktails that we may see out there that are very, so cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much for that, because now we can definitely wow our guests making cocktails they've probably never had before.
Absolutely. So this is, again, it's like that cross, as I said, that Legionnaires Club, but also you're adding in like coconut milk. So you give it that decadence that you might be looking for in more of a creamy style, even tiki style cocktail.
So Kayla, now that you've wowed us with your skills of how to make a great rum cocktail, I wanted to give this, before we actually, now we're getting close to the finale of our webinar, is open up this segment to our audience for questions.
Pardon me.
And I encourage all of our guests who have been, we want to thank them for on this webinar with us for about an hour or so. Now is the time to ask Kayla some questions about rum, Flor de Caña, cocktails, anything you want. Ari, do you have any questions that we can kick off with?
Yeah, so anybody wants to ask a question, I sent a chat message. If anybody wants to ask a question, just type it in. One of the first questions was, are these good sipping rums? And what is the sugar content on these mixers?
So these are absolutely wonderful sipping rums. Again, there's a dry style of rum. So what ends up happening in the rum world is a lot of people associate rum as being that overly sweet cocktail. You kind of hit both on the head there, where it's a lot of the sweetness comes from the mixer that you're using, right? And so the rums themselves are dry with zero sugar. Like we have zero sugar content and we are certified as such. So these rums, although they come from sugar cane, do not have added sugars and do not have any sugar content. Again, when you ferment, you're removing the sugar. The yeast is eating the sugar. So for us, we have nothing there that would qualify as, and again, we're certified as such, and we don't add anything. Regarding the mixers, absolutely. I mean, we've got turbinado sugar as a mixer, right? I mean, that's definitely sugar. There's no way to cut that. As far as the coconut milk, this sweetened. And regarding Boston Harbor, I apologize. I don't know what the sugar content is on that. I'm not that well versed in Rhonda's particular process for producing this, but I'm sure we can find out for you. So the reason why we use I demonstrate the rum old fashioned to answer your question is so that you can control the sweetness of your drink in a very standard style drink with a very dry style of rum. And the same thing with what we now call it's Rhonda's fault or whatever we name this cocktail.
Oh, yeah. What was it? Oh, man. Blame it on Rhonda. Blame it on Rhonda.
Yeah, blame it on Rhonda. There it is. The wonderful coconut cocktail. You control sweetness because the only additive sweetness is perceived as the sugar or perhaps the coffee liqueur. And again, you don't have to add coffee liqueur. You can do this with espresso, cold brew, what have you. So these are all up to you to control your sweet.
All right. So based on that question, another question came in, and can you make these cocktails with stevia instead of sugar, or will it not be as balanced?
You can absolutely use stevia. Stevia does have a very particular taste. It does have I don't really know how to describe the taste for those who have not had stevia. But you can definitely work this cocktail with stevia. You can work both of them with that, no problem at all. You would just have to probably play around with the proportions a little bit more than you would with just standard sugar. Absolutely.
Awesome. And my personal opinion is if you drink enough, you could use whatever you want. It doesn't even matter. Dirt, salt, whatever. Right?
Hey. We don't want dirt in our Flor de Caña cocktails, Ari. You settled down over there.
Yeah, because it comes from the best dirt to begin with. Volcanic soil.
Yeah, it's already got that volcanic soil. Don't even worry about it.
We have another question.
Sure.
You addressed this earlier, but I think this person came in a little bit late. How many employees do you have at Flor de Caña? She didn't catch it if you did mention.
I did not mention. That is something that I will absolutely leave my email for because it does vary between technically what you would call working for Flor de Caña during harvest season of our sugarcane versus off season. And so to answer, at least in the US, we are distributed and supplied with William Grant & Sons, who is in pretty much every state and has many employees. But in the US, there are 6 ambassadors for Flor de Caña. But I'm more than happy to find out an exact number for person who asked that question. And I apologize that I don't have that at top of mind.
Oh, no problem.
And then,
Frank, you have something?
Yeah, we have another question from one of our guests. Is that one of our guests actually is a beverage manager in Harvard Square, and they wanted to ask us, which companies distribute Flor de Caña locally?
Sure. So locally, we're actually dualed. We're partnered with both MS Walker and Martinetti, but we have a specific partnership with United Division within Martinetti. And both are equal pricing across the board, of course.
And if I can just add, I'm big fans of both, but I usually get my MS Walker.
Fair enough. Yeah, we're Switzerland in that sense.
Gotcha.
We will maintain neutrality.
Cool. What else?
I have another one. You personally, as an ambassador, what's your favorite drink?
Drink as in Flor de Caña, like which mark? Or I'm going to fire back a question. I'm sorry.
Flor de Caña. But you know what? After that, tell us anything else.
Sure. So my particular favorite Flor de Caña, it does vary depending on what I'm drinking, right? Like I'm always going to say yes to the 25. Who the heck wouldn't, right? Like, of course. Well, but on my more regular would be the 18 because again, I like dry and bitter style drinks and cocktails. So for me, that works perfectly. In cocktails, however, I would say that the 12 top notch. And in a cocktail in particular, it would be the Old Q, which for me, I think is like a knock it out of the park sort of cocktail when done right. It's comprised of rum, usually aged rum, such as Flor de Caña 12, Angostura bitters, which today, sugar, again, turbinado is fantastic. We use that again today, mint, and then lime juice. And a little bit of sparkling wine. So this is something that's sort of an adaptation of mojito, but served up rather than in an elongated drink. And for me, I think when it's done very well, it is one of the best cocktails.
Another question. Does Flor de Caña offer tours?
We have in the past. Currently do not, obviously due to COVID. I would say that, Nicaragua has been pretty much the ringer in every sense of the word, whether it be from dictatorship to volcanic eruptions to earthquakes to, whatever you got to throw at a country, Nicaragua has dealt with it. And that has impeded a little bit of our ability to show the brand itself in its home country. Which we're looking very much forward to COVID ending and kind of opening up our doors again, for sure.
Yeah, good point. Sometimes I get sucked into what we're doing and what we're talking about, and I completely forget the real world out there.
Especially
Sure. And I was like, are you in a fish tank behind you? I can't tell what your background is.
I'm in a Flor de Caña haze right now, so.
Of course you're lost, Ari, of course.
It's a better world over here.
But no, this
Maryland, a better world.
Right. I don't know about that, but maybe. I don't know.
But Kayla, this was great. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to actually enlighten us about rum in general, and also to get us to know a little bit more about Flor de Caña. I particularly have still learned quite a bit, even though we've worked together on training sessions with staff at the restaurant level, at the retail level, selling the products. But now getting this one-on-one with you virtually has still made an imprint on myself. Hopefully Ari and our guests can take away something more than they did before coming into this webinar about rum and Flor de Caña. We wanted to thank you for your time. This is not the only time that our audience will get to. We definitely hope to have you back soon on some other sessions, maybe some more cocktails. As we mentioned prior offline, we discussed maybe a broadcast at your pad and so forth. But any last minute thoughts or comments before we sign off?
I mean, certainly my gratitude for the opportunity to be here on behalf of myself and on behalf of the brand. Despite being a global brand, we're certainly a growing brand in the U.S. And here in just Mass and in New England in general. I think if I can leave you guys with anything at all, drink more rum. I know that sounds silly, but not even in the sense, as a category as a whole, like drink more rum. It's a very fascinating spirit that has a lot of cultural history, and is not just for frozen drinks at a beach resort. You know, I mean, you can drink it in, you know, neat or on the rocks. You can drink it in varying cocktails. You know, there's some really great books out there that can help you kind of understand rum. And I'm always here for a resource if people need me as well. You know, it's Kayla _DE_Caña, CANA at Instagram. So, you know, you guys can certainly find me there and ask any questions that you may have about our brand in particular or anything like that.
And social media handles that our audience can kind of follow.
Sure. So the Kayla de Caña that I just explained is probably the most direct.
The most direct, right?
Yeah, certainly. And that you can find on the Cork Stop website, as we've been kind of shouting each other out a bit. So
and Urban Wine
certainly,
Club as well.
And Urban Wine.
Exactly. So I mean, I think it's really just like drink more rum, explore more of the category, play with it in cocktails. It's a really versatile spirit, and has a truly global presence. So I think it's something that, you know, don't limit your scope on rum as a category as a whole. And, you know, we look forward to seeing everybody who's joined us in more events, and hope that you drink more Flor de Caña. Go get your Flor de Caña at the Cork Stop.
Right. Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much. Drink more rum. Blame it on Rhonda, if anything. You can definitely find Flor de Caña on the Urban Wine Club's shopping cart. We got great rum kits that we have mentioned. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes. Kayla, we want to thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for spending some time with us tonight. And we hope to have you very soon.
Awesome. Thank you all. I very much enjoyed it. Enjoy your evening, and cheers to you all.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Ciao.